The Bible gives you the name of Noah's great-great-grandfather. It lists the kings Abraham defeated in battle, every single one. It traces family lines across dozens of generations. But when this man appears, the one Abraham bows to, the one Abraham pays a tenth of everything he owns, the text gives you nothing. No father, no mother, no birth, no death. Just a name that means King of Righteousness. Then silence. Who was he? And why does the most important man in the Bible treat a total stranger like he outranks him? This is the Melchizedek mystery. To understand why this matters, we need to go back to one of the most dramatic moments in Genesis. In chapter 14, Abraham, then still called Abram, has just won a war. 4 kings had kidnapped his nephew Lot, so Abraham gathered his men, chased the armies north, and rescued Lot in a night raid. He returned victorious. And as he walks home, something strange happens. A man comes out to meet him. His name is Melchizedek. He is the king of a city called Salem, and he is described in 3 words that stop the story cold. Priest of God Most High. He brings bread and wine. He blesses Abraham, and then Abraham, the father of a nation, the man chosen by God, gives this stranger 1/10 of all his war spoils. Then Melchizedek disappears. No backstory, no farewell, no explanation. He exists in exactly 4 verses of the entire Old Testament. For over 700 years after this moment, his name is never mentioned again, until King David writes a single line in the Psalms, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." David wrote those words after he conquered Jerusalem, the very city where Melchizedek once ruled. Then, more than 1,000 years after Genesis 14, the letter to the Hebrews returns to the same scene and builds one of the boldest theological arguments in the New Testament. 3 appearances, across 1,000 years of Scripture, the same mysterious name. To understand why this figure haunted the biblical world for so long, we need to see the world he came from. The meeting between Abraham and Melchizedek likely took place in the 2nd millennium before the Common Era. A world without Israel, without a temple, without any organized priesthood. Canaan at this time was a land of competing city-states, each with its own king and its own gods. Warfare was constant. Loyalty shifted with every new alliance. Into this world walks a man who is simultaneously king and priest. That combination was rare, and his city, Salem, is almost universally identified by Josephus, by the Targums, by early rabbinic tradition, as the location that would eventually become Jerusalem. The 1st century historian Josephus wrote it directly. Salem was Jerusalem's earlier name. This means Melchizedek was not ruling some distant, unknown place. He was king of the ground that would one day hold Solomon's temple. Archaeologists have found evidence of Bronze Age religious activity on the Jerusalem hills predating the Israelite settlement. Ritual sites and sacred layers stretching back centuries before David ever arrived. The land was already considered holy by people who came long before, and critically, Melchizedek worshipped El Elyon, God Most High, the same name Abraham used for his God. He was not a pagan stranger. He was a priest of the same divine name. Abraham recognized this immediately, and that recognition is exactly what makes the story so unsettling. Here is where the story stops being a historical footnote and becomes something much harder to explain. The author of the letter to the Hebrews does not try to solve the Melchizedek puzzle. He leans into the silence, he points at what the text does not say, and calls it proof. Without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. In a book where every major figure comes with a family tree, the complete absence of one is nearly impossible. The author of Hebrews says this was not an accident, but scholars have reached very different conclusions. Some historians argue that Genesis 14 sits awkwardly in its surrounding narrative. Its literary style is different. Its vocabulary is unusual. Some source critics suggest it may have been an independent tradition, perhaps from a pre-Israelite religious culture in Jerusalem, later absorbed into the Hebrew scriptures. If true, Melchizedek may have been a real historical figure from a distinct priestly tradition preserved because of his connection to the holy city. Others believe the passage was inserted deliberately to give Jerusalem and its future priesthood a sacred legitimacy stretching back before Abraham himself. But the most unexpected interpretation comes not from scholars or theologians. It comes from a cave in the Judean desert. In 1947, among the Dead Sea Scrolls found at Qumran, researchers discovered a fragmented document now called 11Q13. It dates to roughly 100 years before the Common Era, and what it describes is startling. In this scroll, Melchizedek is not a human king. He is a heavenly being, a celestial priest and warrior. On the final day of atonement, he will lead the armies of light against the forces of Belial, the ruler of darkness. He will free the righteous. He will judge the wicked. The same figure who appears in 4 verses of Genesis has become, 5 centuries later, a commander of angels. Scholars connect this heavenly Melchizedek closely to the archangel Michael, the great defender of God's people. The Qumran community, believing they lived at the edge of history's final battle, placed Melchizedek at its very center. 3 completely different versions of the same figure: human king, eternal priesthood, heavenly warrior, one name, 3 worlds. What does it tell us about human beings that we keep returning to this figure across 1,000 years, and each time we need him to be something greater? Psychologists who study authority and charisma have found something consistent across cultures. Figures who appear without explanation, act with power, and then vanish carry a weight that fully explained figures simply do not. The mind cannot anchor them, cannot reduce them, and so it elevates them. Melchizedek has no origin story to make him ordinary, no death to make him finite. But there is something even more striking in Abraham's response. Abraham was not powerless. He had just defeated 4 kings. He had men, wealth, and a direct covenant with God. And yet he bows. He gives a tenth. He submits. Social psychologists have found that when a high-status individual voluntarily defers to another person, it sends a powerful signal to everyone watching. Abraham's act of tithing to Melchizedek was a public declaration of hierarchy, one the letter to the Hebrews would use 1,000 years later to argue that even the ancestors of the Levitical priests had once bowed to a higher order. There is a deeper pattern here. When religious institutions become rigid or distant, people instinctively reach for a figure who existed before the institution, someone whose authority is not granted by the system but who precedes it entirely. The Qumran community needed a priest who owed nothing to a temple they believed had fallen. The author of Hebrews needed a priesthood older and higher than Aaron's lineage. Both found their answer in the same silent stranger. This does not reduce the sacred. It deepens our understanding of why certain figures carry such power across so many centuries. 3,000 years after Abraham met him on a road outside Salem, we still cannot agree on who or what Melchizedek was. Human king, angelic warrior, eternal priest, a sign that points beyond itself. Perhaps the most honest thing the Bible ever does with him is exactly what it does from the very first verse. Say nothing about where he came from and nothing about where he went. Because some figures in Scripture are not meant to be solved, they are meant to ask a question. And the question Melchizedek asks, of Abraham, of the Qumran community, of the author of Hebrews, and now of you, is this: do you recognize sacred authority when it comes without credentials? If these ancient mysteries move you, if you want to explore the Bible through history, archaeology, and the depths of human nature, subscribe to Eden Unsolved. Every week, we open a new case. Like this video if the mystery stayed with you, and we will see you in the next investigation.